and welcome to the Deck and Awesome podcast. My name is Brian, and I'm joined as always by the awesome Ciara and Owen.
Hello.
Hi.
So today we are chatting about our experience with Board Game Arena. We're going to talk about what it is, what it was like adapting dice summoners for the online world, and why we like Board Game Arena so much. So, Board Game Arena, for those of you who haven't come across it, is a fantastic online platform for playing board games. There are tons and tons of free games up there. You can play with your friends, you can play private games, or you can just log on and play with any amount of strangers. It is fantastic. You can play it on your phone, on your laptop, on whatever. If you haven't checked out Board Game Arena already, it is definitely worth doing. It has certainly saved us a bit of lockdown meltdowns throughout this whole COVID experience. So why don't you guys tell us a bit more about Board Game Arena?
So, Board Game Arena is a board game platform that allows you to play games where the rules have been implemented using code. So, it's kind of a really good place to play a game that you might not be that familiar with, or you might have only played once before, or you haven't played at all. So, you don't have to learn all the rules. It's a good idea to do it, but the platform guides you as well. So it's really good in that way. It makes it a little bit easier to get started. It's a 2D platform for the most part. They do have a handful of games in 3D, and they're really, the 3D games done really well, look great, but they are few and far between because it's quite a hard platform to develop 3D games on. But everything that you have in a 3D game in real life can be implemented, or well, most things anyway, in 2D. So the platform doesn't really hinder that in any way. Like dice, you can do a little bit of visuals with the dice, but effectively your result is usually fine to represent 2D.
The only thing you're missing out on really is your minis, but otherwise as good as.
Exactly. You don't lose anything. And then it's free. So you can play most games on it for free. There are premium games as well that you have to pay to play. You kind of pay a subscription fee, and then you get access to all the premium games. So like to start out with, play the free games. There's so many of them, and it's loads of fun. And then go to premium if there's a game you really, really want to play, and you know that it'll be worthwhile going to it. Because it's free as well, it's a really good platform to figure out games that you might like in the future to buy and own, and to get an idea of a game that people have been talking about and you're curious about.
I suppose you say as well that even though the premium is a subscription service, it's not ridiculously expensive. And if you want to play premium games with any of your friends or that online, you don't all have to have premium accounts. That just one person can get a premium account. They can host the game and invite their friends to play, which is a cool feature. It encourages premium, but it's not going to break the bank for everyone if you want to play it.
Yeah, I absolutely love Board Game Arena. There's so many games out there that are implemented in Board Game Arena, and playing them also, especially playing games you played before, with friends, playing on Board Game Arena with all the rules implemented is so fun, because I learn actually sometimes what specific card rules are, but you don't have to keep constantly reading what the cards do or their effects and stuff like that. You can just play the game. So if you're playing something like Roll for the Galaxy, you don't have to worry about all the combinations and all the different specifics. Your actions will show you what actions are available to you, and then which ones you can kind of ship out, and all that kind of stuff is handled for you in the game, which makes it a breeze, but you also learn more about the games you love. So it just means less reading of the rules, more time playing, and just a great selection. Yeah,
so we talked a bit at the start about how we adapted our game, Dice Summoners, for Board Game Arena. I mean, why would we have done this?
Yeah, well, we heard about Board Game Arena a while ago. I think I can't remember how long ago before we started thinking about implementing Dice Summoners, but we really wanted to kind of give people a chance to play Dice Summoners before they bought the game. And we had to look around at different kind of alternatives to Board Game Arena, the different choices out there. Kind of like, you can have Steam games, you can have Tabletop Simulator, those kind of things. They're all really good, but Board Game Arena, we thought, was, as kind of developers ourselves, it gave us the best platform to kind of create the game, and it also is the best kind of community that we wanted to be part of. So it kind of had all these pros going for it that just meant that Board Game Arena was like a really good option.
Nice. I suppose as well it helps that COVID lockdown happened and everyone was stuck at home with nothing to do. And in the very first lockdown, when the novelty of all of this was still going on and people weren't stuck in their houses staring out the window longingly, we had a bit of time to work on it. I know I know Owen did the absolute lion's share of this. He couldn't have done it without me, just being their personal cheerleader, but realistically I did nothing. So
yeah, there's some of the best pros about Board Game Arena for choosing it is, I think, not having to download the game is another one, that because if you go Steam, you have to download the game, everyone has to buy the game, and then you have to play it together. Whereas this, you can play it on your mobile phone, and then if you want to switch to your PC, you can do that because it's all web based. And the sessions are fine. You can close things out, you can reopen them again. All that stuff is handled in the back end by the servers. So it's just a really handy way of playing board games.
I think as well, what pushed us to do it was the UK Games Expo. At the time, the UK Games Expo was going to be our first virtual Games Expo, and we didn't really know how to approach it. We were just brainstorming what we could and couldn't do to get ourselves out there for the UK Games Expo, and having an online version of our game came up as a really big pro to having something to show. Now, we didn't get it done in time for the actual expo itself, but at least it was part of kind of the ideas we were throwing out there to get ourselves in a better position for virtual than we were at the start of COVID. That was kind of just getting ourselves ready for what to do in the online world.
Yeah, so why did we go with Board Game Arena over the likes of Steam? You mentioned that Steam was a good option for playing online board games as well. If you're considering developing your game or developing a game, why Board Game Arena over the likes of Steam or Tabletop Simulator or anything like that?
Yeah, I think if you're focusing it from kind of a software development point of view or like a coder's point of view, and you're looking at all these different kind of options available to you, Steam is great because you can develop it any way you want. So if you are a computer game developer, you can use the skills you have and then develop the computer game. I used to be, but not anymore. So I think as people, there's a lot more web developers out there or web coders who understand like JavaScript and PHP and stuff like that. And Board Game Arena is a really strong option for them. Tabletop Simulator is also great too. The problem is the restrictive implementation of the rules means it's much harder to implement exactly what the game rules are when you're playing the game. And so people can kind of stray off course and do the wrong things or put cards in the wrong places. And so it can get a bit more confusing for the players because they have to be like a master at the rules. Whereas in Board Game Arena, you can make sure that the person can never go outside that rule set.
Yeah, I think on Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia, it's more like they're providing a platform and you try and implement your game on top of a kind of a very comprehensive platform. So they've decided kind of the look and feel of everything and you add your pieces in. And that's really, really helpful. You just have to really worry about your components and then people can do whatever they need to do to get the game going because they know how to play your game. But our reach probably wasn't far enough that enough people would know exactly how the rules are meant to be played and would invest the time in learning all those rules. And rather than kind of forcing anyone who was interested in our game to have to learn all the rules cold and then try and play it on Tabletop Simulator, we just thought having it on Board Game Arena means that, yeah, the game guides you into having to when you click summon a creature, the basic creatures pop up onto the very clever thing of having them appear at the top of the screen to kind of force you to go, oh, this is what I now have to deal with. And you're guided along. So even if you only do a brief run through of the rules, you have enough there that you are kind of guided along. And Tabletopia and Tabletop Simulator didn't do that in a way that we thought people who wouldn't be familiar with our game would find it easy to pick up. For bigger games, that's not a problem because they're famous enough and people have them in real life enough that they don't need to worry about that. But we probably weren't there. And then, like as Owen said, Steam, you need to be like a software house to build a good game on Steam that's going to get the money in to counteract how much time and effort you've spent on it. Because like Steam is a brilliant platform, but you're competing with computer games. And board game selection on there is really high quality. It is a board game selection that can compete with computer games. Like really good renderings of Gloomhaven and Psy and Terraforming Mars are all on there and they're really good quality.
Well, that's certainly a lot to think about. So Board Game Arena does make it a bit easier for, you to set it up so players will have to follow the rules of the game and can figure it out. So no more swiping money from the bank in Monopoly now. You're following the rules or nothing.
Yeah.
If someone's interested in getting into development on Board Game Arena, does it cost anything?
No. I think if you are a coder that you want to get involved in Board Game Arena, all you have to do is sign up, and you can get a developer account in Board Game Arena. And there is so many great projects of board games that haven't been implemented yet. But once you get the access, then you can start downloading other people's projects and checking them out and seeing how they manage the JavaScript connecting to the PHP. There's lots of different options there, and you can also start doing some tutorials on some kind of basic games like Reversey and Hearts, and they'll help you kind of understand the kind of games that work the best in Board Game Arena.
Myself and Owen both looked at the tutorials to make sure that we could figure out a way of coming up with how we'd implement dice summoners on the platform, and that really did give us a lot of information. The tutorials aren't like comprehensive of every single feature of Board Game Arena, but they definitely cover the fundamentals, and you can kind of get a much better idea when looking at the code. If you are somebody who codes even as a hobby, you might get enough information there on what you need to do.
Before we started recording, we had debated what the word for hobbyist coder is. If you are someone who codes as a hobby, can you message us and let us know? Because we haven't got to the bottom of this. That's just...
I say coders. Coders.
Code hobbyists. I don't know. It's hard. There's no defined word out there. Or there is.
Hodor.
Since you guys did the majority of it, tell us a bit about how the developing of the game went.
Yeah, so like Kira said, it started off with the tutorials. With the tutorials, we both kind of try to figure out, this framework, this Board Game Arena framework could do, and what kind of potential it has. We would take the 3 tutorial projects and kind of mess around with them and see what kind of messages we can send. And then we started working on the basic kind of platform of dice summoners, which is just kind of like no dice, just cards. And we just started from that very basic principle and see if we could get like JavaScript sending synchronous messages and changing the state of the backend. And then once we had that, then we started developing the new features. So Kira was great. She was we kind of worked together, architecting and designing the game, and then bug fixing. And then I wrote most of the code.
Yeah, Owen had much more work to do on this. After work every evening was working away on actually the bulk of the code. I just dipped in and out.
And I was also here.
Because you can get everyone else's projects as well. So you can get like Castles of Burgundy, and you can see other people's implementations. You can see kind of what the general approach is to developing the games, which is kind of hard to describe. But there's in the framework, there's obviously there's the back end of the PHP, and then there's a front end of where you can kind of control how it looks, like the state of the game. And then you also have the JavaScript, which then controls the nice, pretty stuff in the front end, but it doesn't do a whole lot of logic. And yeah, once you start getting your head around that, because there's lots of different there's lots of different board games out there, so there's lots of different approaches you can take to developing it. We went with a very synchronous approach where each state had someone do something, and then it goes on to the next state. There wasn't much asynchronous kind of actions that could happen at any moment. And that kind of fit perfectly in with what Board Game Arena wanted to do. So we stayed within that kind of framework very easily. But you can extend it and you can add in cool things. Santorini has a very cool 3-dimensional JavaScript front end. I'm sure that took a long time to develop. But yeah, I'm sure in the back end, it looks almost identical to our code of that kind of synchronous state.
Yeah, the raw JavaScript, I think you were saying, really means that there's a lot of work to everything that you write. So you have to be prepared for... There's going to be a lot of code even for the simple things to some degree.
Yeah, architecting it was difficult. I think we didn't come up with a massive plan as to how we were going to approach every single feature. We kind of went in with an approach of developing the basics, the fundamentals, and then just taking our time and seeing how to fit all this stuff together without actually digging into the code too much. And then we slowly kind of added it together in piece by piece. I think for developing in Board Game Arena, the game definitely needs to be fully finished and fully released, because changing things isn't that easy. So yeah, I think that there's loads of games that are already out there that publishers have said they want on Board Game Arena, but they just don't have the developers to work on it. So if you're a coder, definitely check out one of those.
Cool. So if you're going down the road of, maybe it's your own game, maybe you want to work on a game you physically played, what are the stages for, sitting down at a keyboard to getting the game fully released? What kind of hurdles do you have to go through?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the first one, which is you got to set yourself up as a developer on Board Game Arena, and then you have to get rights from the publisher to actually develop the board game. Now, luckily, there's a whole bunch of board games there already that publishers want developed. But if you don't see the board game there, you can always contact the publisher and say, "Hey, I'm a Board Game Arena developer. This is my first game. I would love if it was if I could." Develop this for Board Game Arena. You'd be surprised how often publishers would say yes to that. Maybe they have their own plans for like creating a game in Steam and they don't want one in Board Game Arena. But at least, if you don't send a message, you won't know.
That's true. We asked the publishers of Dice Summoners and they were very obliging.
I think I sent an email to Kira, I think it was.
And I responded to agree.
Yeah, very handy. A little bit of nepotism there, but still.
I do think you have to go through Board Game Arena before approaching any of the companies yourself. Just check that Board Game Arena themselves have contacted a lot of publishers. So they have a list of people they've recently contacted to see if they could license a game. So don't be afraid to approach them. Anything we asked them about, they were very, very helpful, the team that works on it.
And you might be kind of hesitant to say, I'm not going to develop an entire board game. It seems like a lot of work, but I think most of the work is done by the framework. You're not going to have to worry about sending messages back and forth, dealing with states. If you work inside that framework, they have enough of the functionality in there to allow you to do whatever you want. Yeah, I tried it. So once you've done that and you've kind of figured out, you can kind of send the messages to the publishers and not worry too much about what the response is. You would then start working on the tutorials and the technical documentation. Like Kira said, it's not perfect and it won't cover all the use cases, but there's a lot of information in there as to what each kind of front end messages do and how it relates to the back end. And once you do the tutorials, you'll get a very firm understanding of how to develop a game in Board Game Arena. Obviously, once you start developing the board game, then it starts facing into issues of how do I get specific functionality to work, and that can be very tricky.
We found that the forums were a really good tool, like trawling through some of the answers on certain functions and stuff like that. A lot of people encounter the same problems. Like if you have a dice or a card game, people have discussed hundreds of things that are related to dice and card game utilization of the board game libraries available on Board Game Arena. So like the resources on the actual site itself are good. There's just maybe not, everything isn't as straightforward. So just persevere and look around the whole site to try and get the information that you're looking for. And if you can, like one of the things I just did to help out was I just played a lot of Board Game Arena games and then told on when I saw features that we might want to use. And so that we could just, there's a lot of people allow their code to be freely available to you on Board Game Arena so you can take a copy. So when we found games that had the thing we want implemented, we could just get a copy of the data and find out how they did that and then copy it.
Yeah, plagiarism. Yeah, try and plagiarize as much as possible. There's so many people.
So plagiarism is highly illegal. If you steal from one person, that is completely wrong. If you steal from many people, that's research. Perfectly acceptable.
There are some really good examples of games out there that do some really cool things. Yeah, you might look at, if you look at the tutorials, you might get a bit confused as to why Board Game Arena is so popular, because it doesn't seem like it has that much functionality, but it's kind of what the community does with that framework is really interesting and really cool. There's so much interesting things that they've done. Like, I'd say Santorini's obviously the best looking game out there I've seen, but we've seen like great implementations of Love Letter and Dungeon Pets and Dice Forge that kind of helps us, especially with dice related games and card games, kind of figure out what we want and how we want the kind of flow to look inside the game. Yeah, so once you get that kind of settled down, you've kind of figuring out how to do it. You create the basic kind of game you have. Then you can start releasing the game onto Board Game Arena. And as a developer, you're going to be pushing everything to alpha. And this is kind of like the very basics of the game. And then at that point, you can also invite people in to play the game at that point and see and kind of mess around with it and see if you can get bugs out of it and kind of develop new features. But yeah, that whole process until the game is fully kind of completed, you're going to be in alpha for a long time, just trying to figure stuff out.
Sorry, you need 10 people to approve the game, and if you're not that popular a game or you don't have that much of a backing, it can take a while to get 10 people with the right credentials to review and approve the game. So it will take a few weeks if you don't have enough people who know your rules.
For the most part, the testers are brilliant. They'll go on, they'll give you lots of great feedback. They'll say, oh, look, we tried this out, this didn't really work. If you fix this and get back to them and go, oh, look, there you go, I think I've sorted that out now. They play through it and everything seems fine. Give you the big old thumbs up.
And there's lots of functionality that you don't have to add straight away into the game. Kind of flashy stuff that we put in. You know, like we didn't even implement defense tokens until much later on. And then we have like dice, and then we also had translations. So there's lots of other things that we don't have to worry about too much. Like if you're waiting for artwork from the publisher and they don't want to give you the final artwork until like you are done, you have to have placeholder stuff. That can all be, you know, developed with whatever you have. Because I know once we went to beta, then we started putting in like the proper artwork, proper big content, and kind of making it look nice as possible. But yeah, alpha lasts a while, and then once it goes into beta, that's like a big release point. That one took a long time for us, but it was really satisfying to see it. Once it goes into beta, all of your bugs, or at least the ones that you've found, should have been resolved, and they were for dice summoners. You might still get some feature requests. We get some feature requests for cool things that people want to see, but we're not fully able to implement it at that time. Then once it goes into beta, then instead of it just being a few people playtesting it, like people who are like being playtesters for a long time, it's now open to everybody, the entire world. And you'll immediately see your plays go from like 2 a day to about like 1,000 a day. And if there is any bugs, they will be found out pretty quickly.
Yeah, people, that is one great thing about Board Game Arena, is people aren't hesitant about going, oh, hey, found a problem, here you go. So, and now in a nice way, and they're not just slamming the game, they're going, oh, hey, look, I noticed that this didn't work exactly the way I thought it would. You know, is that the way it's supposed to, or does that need to be fixed? So for the most part, the feedback and the community there has been fantastic with helping us out.
Yeah, they're a lot nicer than my usual people who are giving me bugs in my actual job. These guys like help you go through it, and they kind of point out what's going on. And if you want to talk to them, you can kind of ask them questions, and it's a very friendly atmosphere. There's not this whole kind of, you know, like offer product kind of thing, because it's a free game. Everyone's just like happy that there's games there rather than privilege. You know, they want something out of it. Very nice people. Yeah.
So Board Game Arena has a huge amount of resources available there for you, which is incredible. So they've got the tutorials that you guys were talking about. There's the other games that you can borrow code from. It does sound like it really offers you a lot of functionality to getting your game up and running. So would you say all you need is the stuff that's available there on Board Game Arena and 8 to 10 plus years of coding experience?
I haven't done PHP in a long time, and I do JavaScript development, but it's kind of newer JavaScript. I don't want to be harsh on Board Game Arena, but it's like kind of an older versions of stuff. But that's only because it works with the framework. So you'll be sending Ajax, but it's not a big deal. I think anybody who is interested in web development, you don't have to dig too deep into PHP and JavaScript. You just need to understand. You need to have done something similar, whether it's PHP or it's Java or C++ or whatever. Once you have that kind of knowledge, you can create a game pretty quickly, because you're mostly just calling libraries.
Yes. Hello? Is this a library? Still have books? You guys still open?
Close. Not really what I meant, but yeah.
That's why I didn't get involved in the coding.
I do think that the platform has a lot of the answers on their own website. We didn't have to stray too far from. There are some good like tutorial videos and stuff like that on YouTube and stuff, but actually, well, mostly Owen, but me and Owen found a lot of the answers that we were looking for on the site itself, or just through perseverance of like tweaking the use of some libraries and functions.
Yeah, I think if you're going to develop it yourself, you're going to have to put in some pretty strict development guidelines for your own kind of work, because, you know, if you are developing the game from scratch, you're going to have to come up with your own backups of the data, maybe put it all in GitHub or Bitbucket or something like that. Now, obviously, Board Game Arena has their own kind of code stuff in there, but you're better off having one created by yourself. You can get into issues of, you know, changing a small bit of Ajax here or changing something there, and then your game not working. And it's really difficult to find out why without, like, because you can put in system prints, and the debugging is quite good. And there is like lots of exception logs inside Board Game Arena, but it can be tricky to hunt down exactly why. Kira mentioned it before of using the forum. That's really good. But at the end of the day, it's going to be hard work and perseverance to try and figure out how some bugs occurred. I remember one bug me and Kira worked on for like a day, and it was an SQL bug, and I can't remember what it was, but we ended up spending a day, and it was a 1-line fix, but it was a really important line.
So it's not so different from coding then. Coding anything else, yeah.
One day you can do like 1,000 line of code, and the next day you're fixing one specific line, and you're figuring out why this line won't work. Yeah, it can be tricky, but that's the nature of JavaScript and PHP. I think, you can't locally kind of run things. You kind of have to chuck it up onto the server on Board Game Arena to kind of get an understanding of it.
Oh yeah, that made it quite like difficult. Once you go into alpha, there's nowhere you can or it's not easy to just create a test instance, I don't think, that's available to you. So that can make it a little bit frustrating. It was definitely hard for me. I'd just be looking at the code cold if I was trying to help out with a bug, or just like looking through things to try and figure out if we could do something better. So that definitely is a little bit different. I guess that's kind of like old-fashioned style of coding. Definitely when I was working on mainframe, there wasn't an easy test environment, but it's kind of the same sort of system. So there's great features that Board Game Arena has, but it's not like a fully fleshed out development environment in that sense, in the modern kind of all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. But I still developing an IDE, still like choose Visual Code or IntelliJ or something like that. Is that even what I used? I can't even remember what I used.
We use Visual Code.
Was it Visual? Yeah.
Visual Studio Code. Yeah, it's Visual Studio Code.
I don't know. They renamed themselves. It used to be Visual Studio, and then now it's called Code or something. So,
no,
I don't know.
Well, Visual Studio, Community is the C# one that I use.
But it only really does PHP and kind of JavaScript. It's hard because you're calling libraries that the IDE doesn't kind of, because there's sort of like Board Game Arena will interpret the code a little bit differently than what the IDE expects, so it can look a bit weird. But there's like, if you once you start developing and you start doing the tutorials, you'll see that there's common things you're going to do to kind of see what the bugs are, see what the issues are, especially when compilation, and you'll start to get the hang of it pretty quickly.
Cool. So if you were going at this second time round again, or you were going to take another crack at it, would you do anything differently?
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think we made the right decision on how we were going to approach the game to be like synchronous calls. I think we would have understood a bit more about how it communicates with the backend. So one of the problems we had is we hard coded in a lot of things that we didn't realize that would be variable or want to be configured later on, because dice summoners, the board game doesn't have them as variable. So things like having a global view of the defense tokens, or having like randomized deck sets starting off. Those things were very difficult to implement right now because of the approach we made at the start. So we have there's this thing in Board Game Arena, and it's called a materials. And inside the materials, pretty much has the state and all the starting off data that your game needs to run. So whether that's all the cards and all the cards' abilities and what the dice do, and structuring that in a very kind of easy way at the start helped us finish the game pretty quickly, but it also kind of set us in stone as to how the game was going to be developed in the future. But I think we made the right approach.
I think that the end result was really great. I think that the fact that we have a game online, especially right now, is fantastic. It's great to see people playing our game, even though like it's been hard right now to kind of push dice summoners and work on developing the board game or selling the board game, because we don't have events that we can go to and kind of sell to people. So I'm really glad that we have this opportunity. I definitely think Board Game Arena was the right choice for our platform. I think that the more we've learned about it versus the other platforms available, the more I think we can kind of be happy that we made the right decision to allow the most people to play our game who wouldn't have played it before. And it would have been great to have a bit more time before the UK Games Expo so that we could have showcased it there. I guess I would say that to everyone, the playtesting and bug fixing is going to take up a little more than you expect. The platform has rules on how to implement things, and then it has just things that don't work that well and things that do work a lot better. And though there's no particular things like turn-based, there were a few things we did that meant that turn-based took a lot longer. And I think that they were some of the feature requests that came in like straight off the mark, like defense token strategies and stuff like that. That sort of thing where we play it real time at a table in real life, and then you move to a platform, and these are the things that people want to do so that they can play with their friends who maybe can't get online at the same time as them. And I guess we weren't expecting that to be so popular. We actually didn't use board game to play long games over a long period of time with people. So because that wasn't our usage profile, we hadn't really thought that it was so popular. And then once we had gone to alpha, we had realized that there's a few people who play like that. And alpha testing took a lot of like pushing to get people to play. Even though we got good reviews, it just took time to get people who were willing to submit reviews and help us get it over the line, even though the community was so great and everyone was really, really helpful. But it's still a long process. And we thought because we're the publisher and the developers, it might be a little bit easier. And I think that it was for some of the steps, but for other steps, it's still just a matter of time.
Yeah. You make a good point about when we released into beta that we had turn-based combat and there was issues with it. That was partly our problem of when we tested it, we always tested it in real time. And then there were some fundamental issues with the turn-based game. But, you know, the community created bugs about it, and then we've resolved those bugs pretty quickly. But I think that also shows one of the powers of Board Game Arena, which is if you kind of develop it inside the framework and you make sure to follow their kind of guidelines, once you release that game, you get a whole bunch of features that you don't get in other games that just come for free. So obviously there's the chat that people can talk about. You also have this turn-based game that can last, you know, days. So each day person plays a move, kind of like chess. That's kind of cool that it just comes for free. And then you also have translations, which I love. So you can have, you know, people play in Japanese and they're having a great time. And obviously the artwork isn't converted into Japanese, but the tooltips they kind of hover over it. And that's perfect for people to kind of understand the game and play the game in a different language. Once you follow all those guidelines, all that is done. And you might be confused, like, well, I didn't translate my game into Japanese. There's also this community in Board Game Arena who will translate your game for you for free. They obviously get something. They get, like, you know, Board Game Arena tokens that they can, you know, use. But that means that then you have this whole bunch of people from all over the world translating your game and then making it available to everybody, which is it's awesome to see. I remember we didn't even know it was happening, and then we check our stuff and we have like in Spanish and in Greek, and it's all over the place. So that's awesome to see. So once you follow those guidelines, it just becomes part of it. Now, obviously, we had bugs for all these things because we didn't really pay attention to the translations until beta, because we didn't really understand how it works. But once the bugs started coming up, then we figured it out.
But that really was amazing to see, like, because on Board Game Geek, people started reviewing the game that they had played on Board Game Arena. So, like, we were seeing reviews coming in from, you know, South America, Antarctica, Russia. They were coming in from literally everywhere, and we were like, where are people getting this? Oh yeah, the online one. Oh yeah. But it was incredible. It was very humbling.
That was a bit of a two-sided sword, though, because obviously the Board Game Arena one doesn't have the full fleshed out design that our actual game has, so you're kind of being judged on a fairly a limited version of your game, but it was still great to see people, like, so many people playing from all over the world.
Yeah, I wasn't expecting that. I didn't expect people playing the Board Game Arena game only to, you know, review it in Board Game Geek, but people do. Very strange.
Yeah, because they haven't played the actual game, so I feel that's a bit of a weird, yeah.
So I suppose the real test of, you know, would you recommend Board Game Arena or not is, would you do this again? Our future games, all the next and upcoming DAG games, which you guys should definitely subscribe to, so you hear about them first. Will we launch those games on Board Game Arena?
I think so. I think there are games where we can't because they're one playthrough games, but there are definitely games like Bumperbots that we will be pushing to Board Game Arena. Whether we make it free or premium, it's tough to know. We love the idea of free just because it means that people can play the game and then buy it. But if people are struggling to buy the game, then it can be, you know, it's struggling to put it down as for free.
I think that one of the things you have to consider when you're deciding on whether your game, I guess, should go on Board Game Arena or not, as well as whether you should put your next game on Board Game Arena, is what sort of game it is. Like, worker placement games and turn-based games are really, really suited to Board Game Arena. But I think we're going to be releasing a escape room style game. I'm not sure that will fit into the structure of Board Game Arena and won't really help. I think that it won't look as good or feel as good as a game on there. So I definitely say if you're a publisher of like social deduction games, really think if that's the right platform that's gonna sell that game to everyone playing. And RPGs and stuff like that will probably keep on RPG preferred sites for the main bulk of our like games, real board games. I think it's a good platform.
Yeah, because I assume like when I play Board Game Arena and playing a social deduction game, I will play it over Zoom, and then I'll have Board Game Arena as like on the side where people can play it. So I'm using different ways of communicating with people outside of Board Game Arena because their chat is pretty much just text based. So you have to kind of be wary of that. Of if you require a lot of player interaction and player discussions and player conversations, it can be done in Board Game Arena, but you're going to either have to automate it in a way where people are given options and choices, or you have to implement some sort of voice thing.
So any final tips for someone who's considering getting into developing a game or having someone develop their game on Board Game Arena?
Yeah, I would say download a load of Steam board games, play a whole bunch of Board Game Arena board games, and check out Tabletop Simulator and Tabletopia, and just play as many of these games as you can. You don't have to complete any of them or anything. Just mess around, see what kind of features are there, see what kind of functionalities is there, and if it interests you, and especially if you see a game that you love that isn't there, definitely try, just see if you could maybe develop it yourself.
And feel free to check out Owen's code that he wrote for Dice Simulars on GitHub to check out how hard or easy it is to develop a game. There's a lot of code. But you also see where the framework and libraries come into it. So it's definitely worth checking out.
Yeah, send us a comment or message us and get in contact to see if you have any questions on the code, or there's stuff you don't understand, or if there's something specific you want to kind of dig deep into, and then we can have a chat.
Nice. So we have all of our code. Our code is all up on GitHub. As you're listening to this, it should be up there. Unless someone has stolen it from us. I don't know how GitHub works. I assume it's just still going to be up there. But for you, I'm assured that you developer folk out there understand how GitHub works. It's also on Board Game Arena, I assume, because our game is up there. You can see the code we used. So if you're developing a game that has similar functionality to Dice Summoners, you can see how we did it and how it works that way. As we said before, full of tutorials and videos and a very helpful community and forums and that up there. So anyone who's interested in getting into the developing side of things, there's so many resources. And as I said, all of our code is available there for anyone who wants to take a nosy at it. So it's worth pointing out as well, around the time that we're recording this, the company Asmodee have just purchased Board Game Arena. It's hard to know what kind of changes this will mean for the website. I mean, all going well, it's just going to be Asmodee sitting down at a computer and just coding all of their massive library of games onto Board Game Arena, which would be fantastic for the platform. We'd see a huge increase in the number of games that are available up there. So stay tuned. It'll be interesting to see what changes that means in the future.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the more functionality for the framework for developers, and adding in new features that people want that they end up implementing themselves. But yeah, I can't wait to see what would happen with Board Game Arena now that Asmodee is in charge. So
Asmodee, with their seemingly enormous fund of resources behind them and owning almost every game that comes out now, is fantastic. We're very keen to see what happens, positive or negative, because if it's negative, we can just go on the internet and complain about it until they fix us, as is the way of today's society. That pretty much wraps up our whole experience with Board Game Arena. If you've enjoyed this, please share it, tell everyone, follow us on any social media. You can search for Decking Awesome Games. And if you want to try out Dice Summoners yourself and play a game online, just go to Board Game Arena and search for Dice Summoners. We have been Decking Awesome Games. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.
See ya.
Bye.